another one to admit real quick. Okay, everyone. Well, this feels a little deja vu-y after not doing Zoom for a couple of months to be back on a Zoom training, but I think it's going to work out great for everyone. Thank you for being flexible, and thanks for joining us today. Before I introduce our speaker, I did want to take a minute to give you a couple of announcements. So after today, we are going to have a couple of more training opportunities. Actually, you're going to have like 4 or 5 training opportunities over the next month. And so it's kind of crazy. But the next one will be on January the 20th. I'm going to be emailing that out to you tomorrow. And that one is an event that's being offered by To Engage, and it will be via Zoom. So I'm going to put all that in there, but it will be on Zoom, January the 20th. And I didn't pull up the email with all the details, but be watching for that. The next big thing after that is the following week on the 26th, Wednesday, the 26th of January. We are doing an all-day event at Beltway Park North out on 351, and that one is Key Connections. So is anybody familiar with what Key Connections is? Has anyone heard of that in the past? Not many.
I went to
the
first one.
Good. Okay.
It was awesome.
I did too also.
So Key Connections this year is all about creating a collaborative community. And we have, how many of you heard Dr. Martin Irwin when he did the 2 trainings, one in February and one in October of last year? And he's a psychiatrist, world-renowned psychiatrist, that talks about the use of psychotropic and psychiatric medications in children. And it was an amazing training. He's our keynote speaker. Crystal Leak, the therapist, is going to be one of our keynote speakers. Of course, you'll hear from the judges. There's going to be a legal panel. And then Wendy Hollabaugh, our own CFE coordinator, is going to be one of the presenters. And George Levesque is our MC, and he is going to share his story that morning. And he has an amazing story. If you've not heard that before, you are going to really enjoy hearing his story. Uh-oh, let me mute her. Hold on. Okay, if you're not, there we go. Okay, making sure everyone's on mute. So anyway, that is all day Wednesday, the 26th of January. You can get 6 hours of CEU credits by attending that event. So put that on your calendar. I will be sending the email out for that in the next day or two as well. And then in February, on the 11th, on a Friday from 12 to 1:30, we have Judge Aurora Martinez Jones, and she is the family court judge in Travis County in Austin. She has a family drug court to specifically work with families that are struggling with drug issues. Plus, she just has so much. I'm not going to list it all now, but that is going to be a Zoom training as well, an hour and a half of credit, and it's going to be an amazing time with Judge Martinez Jones. So keep those dates on your calendar. You'll be getting the emails. Today, I'm really excited to have Ronica with us. I'm going to let, where is Sandra? Sandra, do you want to introduce Ronica? Because you know her the best of any of us.
I'd love to.
Okay.
Ronica is was the ED at Safe Families in Abilene, but she's recently become the state director for Safe Families. Of course, she's going to tell you about Safe Families, but Ronica's just got probably the biggest heart of anybody I know. They bought a house specifically so they could let kids come in, and she's already had 2. She's about to, I think, adopt one of them. So anyway, she's just she's a great lady, and what a heart she's got for kids. I work with her at Safe Families as a family coach, and if she could do every single job that every single person does in Safe Families, she would do it, because that's how passionate she is about kids.
Mm-hmm.
So,
I
Ronica
agree.
Is her name.
So Ronica is an amazing, calm, wise person. You're going to love hearing from her. She is very knowledgeable on child welfare in general, but on specifically on how to protect families and help families. So you're going to love hearing from her today. So help me give Ronica a round of applause and some high fives. And Ronica, it is yours. You can share your screen or whatever you need to do now.
And how long do I have, Rebel?
You have at least until 7 o'clock.
Okay.
So
All right. I
anytime
wasn't sure if I
between,
had it or if y'all were doing extra training.
no, if you have
all.
6:45 to 7, if people need to drop out, I'll make a note when they leave. But those that stay on, you get 1.5 hours credit for today.
Ooh, all right. Well,
Okay.
first off, thank you, Sandra. I certainly could not do what I do without my wonderful volunteers. And I can't say enough about any of them, but, take her, for an example, that's a CASA advocate and also a family coach with Safe Families. Just thank you so much, Sandra, for your heart. And of course, Rebel, for everything you do. So first, I'm just going to kind of give you a little bit of my why. So whenever I was 4 years old, I remember sitting in a courtroom and telling the judge that I wanted to adopt my little brother. I just, it was right here. It was through Christian Homes. And, I remember like it was yesterday. And bringing home a young brother that was almost 2 years old, so it was going to be that instant playmate. And, in my mind, this is great. I was the oldest, and I would like to say that as wonderful as that day was, that the rest of them were going to be just as wonderful. But he was coming into his sixth home. And after being juggled around that many times, it really did create this little hole in his heart that we never were quite able to fill as a family. And I tell you, I tried, and, I poured into him. And so being molded as I grew up and just loving into him the same way that, I love my natural birth brother, and just pouring into him, I think it's helped define who I am. It has certainly given me a heart for foster care, for adoption, and just for being with these young people that are looking for that one person, to really attach to and that's going to care about them. So, I just want to say, I just appreciate the fact that y'all are on here, that you are wanting to step up to be that one person for somebody. My heart goes out to you, and I just can't thank you enough, because, there are just so many out there right now that need that. So that's kind of, growing up. And I also had another adoptive sibling. She was adopted whenever I was in my 20s and about to have my son. And so it's quite a bit different. That was an open adoption. And so a completely different example. My brother that I first talked about, his parents were addicted to drugs and actually brought him to the orphanage and dropped him off. And he always would say, if only I was with my mom and dad, then everything would be okay. So kind of just picture growing up with him, growing up with a mom that was a teacher. And honestly, she just wrapped around her students very similar to how we do, around our families. Just trying to help any family that was struggling, if a child needed some extra tutoring or whatever. She was a resource teacher back then. She would bring them in, come back home to our home. So I kind of grew up, in that kind of same Safe Families type environment, so just surrounding families and kiddos to try to keep them together. I went on to get my degree in psychology, and then I was called back to the family business. So I've been in the family business, which was an air conditioning company. My father is Ron Smith, and it's Precision Unlimited. And then my business with my husband spun out of that. It's called RW Services, and it's a commercial kitchen business. So anyway, that's kind of my backstory. And during my young married life, I have always felt called to adopt. I wanted to do what my mom had done in bringing, children into the home. And so I thought that's where my calling was going to be. My husband wasn't on board with that quite yet. I had 2 sons, and by the time they were old enough, talking with him, he was saying, yeah, I think this is where we need to be. And so just praying into it. And we were probably a couple of weeks away from reaching out to Christian homes and saying, what does it take? You know, I was already all the way into every other process I could be as far as, you know, looking into adoption. When Safe Families was introduced at the church that I attend, which is Hillcrest Church of Christ. It was under the name Flourish Now at the time, but it was introduced there, and it was here for just a little bit of a stint. It was kind of under what you would say like a franchise. That was back in 2018 to 2019, and it was here about a year. So as soon as it came, it was gone. Not because Safe Families is not strong. We've been around since 2003, but because of the implementer that began that was out of Florida, they wanted to just pull that back to Florida and become really strong there. And so our legislation that has been put in place for Safe Families here in Texas, that was put in place in 2017, it's our caretaker document. It's actually on the state site, was initiated by Larry Gill and the foundations here, the Dodge Jones Foundation. And so Abilene was, you know, instrumental in bringing Safe Families here. And so between just this very first start, and then the people in the community, and then the huge gap that we have here in our community, we don't have enough foster care families. A lot of our children that are removed leave Abilene. And so there was just a group of us that said, what can we do to bring this back? Who do we need to talk to? And how can we get Safe Families back here so that we can be surrounding the families in our community? And so that's kind of what led me into the space that I am now. I do believe that it's a calling. I do want Safe Families to be strong here. We began launching and actually hosting children in September of 2019. And so we do volunteer through the use of churches, and anyone may be a volunteer as long as we are vetted very similar to foster care, background checks, home screenings. Anyone may volunteer, but they need to be willing to work under the ministry of a church, because Safe Families, the way that we're designed, is we work together as a circle of support surrounding a family that is enduring some type of crisis. So, and also are socially isolated in some capacity. And so you're looking at, we want to be as preventative all the way up to mom needs to go in and possibly have, you know, go into the hospital to have a child and doesn't have care for her other children. All the way to maybe at school, we need some extra tutoring or some babysitting to be able to keep a job, whatever it is, where they don't have anyone else that they can lean on, they are going to be referred to us or possibly even call out to us to be able to hopefully be able to use our services. And then past that point, I put it out and I'm looking for a volunteer like Sandra, or like a host family, or like any of our other volunteers that are out there that are saying, yes, we want to walk alongside this family. And once we find that volunteer, then we try to pull the full circle of support around that family. And so what does that mean? You know, I keep using this word circle of support. What does that even mean? So to kind of break down our language, which doesn't mean much to anybody except for us, we have what we call the family coach. That is what Sandra is. That's going to be someone that's going to be similar to a case manager. We are all about empowering our parents. And so we are about them setting their goals and then us helping connect them to the resources in the community. So that family coach is going to come alongside a parent, and they are going to help them set their own goals. And as long as that parent is working towards something and is meeting with their family coach on a weekly basis, then that's how they stay with Safe Families. And whatever that need may be. So say a parent was needing to go in for drug rehab. Well, we actually have families that are capable of hosting children. And so they would be able to take in that person's children for however long that parent needed to go in for rehab. And so that family coach would then step into also checking in on the children, and is the safety piece on as far as everything to do with that hosting. Making sure, you know, interviewing with the children, with the host parents, the other children in the home, and then also, you know, keeping in contact, making sure that communication is going well between the host family and the placing parent, because everyone in Safe Families, we hope, has a relationship. The whole idea is we're surrounding a family that's struggling, that we hope once they're done with the Safe Families piece of it, meaning I've got a goal I'm working on, I'm moving toward this, that hopefully when they leave, that they are leaving with extended family-like relationships that we have put around them. Another piece that we want to talk about is called a family friend. A family friend is receives our least amount of training, but yet is trained, vetted, background checked, home screened, whatever we need to do for them if they're going to have that child in their home, even to babysit. But a lot of our family friends are the ones that are jumping up to help with the tutoring, help with transportation, of walking alongside that host family to, if they need to get those kids to school or whatever it is, or to the doctor, or even just a temporary babysitting. If we're not going to host a child, we will also utilize family friends to then walk alongside a parent, because not all of our parents need hosting. And if we can prevent a child from ever even needing to be removed, even to go stay with a host family, even though it is different, it's completely different than foster care. You would not believe the comments that I hear out of, you know, parents, you know, you're just going like church camp and things like that. And it's pretty interesting the way that they view it, which is beautiful. It really is. But if we can keep that family together, then we can put around them also family friends, and we call them family friend mentors that are doing the same job kind of as that family friend or as that family coach, helping them meet those goals and walking alongside them. Then we just have what you call resource friends. No, those are not vetted people. Those are the people that are going to be in a church ministry or outside of a church ministry, anywhere that's going to say, hey, we can help with furniture, we can help with clothes, we can help with showing up to help move things. We can show up, you know, to do some organizational, whatever it is, they are in our database. But as far as they're never going to be alone with a child, so they're not vetted to the same extent. So those are kind of the terms that we like to use. And so we like to develop these circles of support around a struggling family, so that we can hopefully get in there and help prevent neglect and abuse, because it happens very, very quickly. It's only going to take, you know, a mom not having a good choice to babysit and making a bad choice or leaving a child at home because she has no other alternative and she needs to make it to work to be able to keep her, you know, apartment and so forth and so on. And then that's how easily that it's going to happen. And I mean, y'all are in this realm, so you are very familiar probably with how quickly that can turn. When a mom or a dad, we do have a lot of single fathers that we walk alongside, and actually now after COVID, we have a lot of families that we're starting to walk alongside. But whenever they have no one to call and they pick up that phone, typically they're not calling CPS. You know, they're there to help, but that's not who they're typically reaching out to. They're going to look for whoever it is because they are afraid that they may possibly lose their children if they're not able to care for them. Now, does that not mean, or does that mean that children don't need, of course, we have children that need to be removed. And in those circumstances, that's why you guys are there. That's why we're always searching for more foster care families. That's why we, obviously Rebel's trying to bring on more, CASA advocates. We're never going to be free of, child welfare, but Safe Families is trying to get the volunteers and having our community step out and step into these situations where we can walk alongside these families, that if we can get there in time and be preventative enough that we can keep that family intact. So that's the main kind of piece of what Safe Families is. Now, we're going to have referrals that are going to come from everywhere, schools, hospitals, doctors, self-referrals, CPS. Anyone is going to be reaching out to us. Our past parents are passing on our information on to other families and saying, please call them, get them involved. Again, all voluntary. So whenever a parent decides to use us, they are the ones that have to have custody. So they get to choose whether or not to use Safe Families or not. So that means that if a mom has some health concerns and she's got 3 people lined up and one of them is Safe Families and some of the other ones come through, then she's going to be like, well, I think I'm going to use one of these others, or it could go either way. But if she does choose to, chooses to use us and we're hosting the children or we're walking around alongside this family, she can also choose when to end it. Now, depending on the circumstance will be whether or not we need to call CPS to make sure that's a safe home that those children are returning to. Or if, yeah, mom, come on over and let's get the kiddos, so it's all different spectrum there as far as, whenever she asked or the dad asked, for those children to be returned. And then also the same on the other side. Our volunteers can choose to end it. They're not locked in to keeping a child or hosting a child or surrounding a family any longer than they may want to. Hopefully they are whenever they make that commitment, that they've prayed into it, thought it, given it certainly a lot of thought. We don't want to just be moving children around or families around. But if they choose, this is just not a fit for me, they can also choose to end the relationship. And they can also volunteer for whatever it is that they're capable of doing. So if we need the hosting for 2 weeks and someone says, hey, I can do 5 days, or I can do whatever, they can also put out there and they can have a hard stop. That is another thing when we talk about the time element, we really are. When we have a parent reach out to us, we are also looking at, can we help this parent meet their goals within 6 months or less? Now, that does not mean that we cannot surround a family for longer. That's just kind of what it is that we're looking for, because typically the volunteers that we have that we can pull from are going to be ones that are going to want to stay within that 6 month or less. We have one right now. Mom is in jail close to Houston. And so the little baby that was born will be hosted until July. So we're going to be running into closer to a year. So there are those circumstances when our volunteers will do that, but typically definitely want something that's a year or less. When she first reached out, we were looking that was going to be 8 months or less, but we are going to, move up to closer to that year. But that is one of the things as the staff piece that we're looking for. Is there any questions that I have so far just from that piece or what I've given y'all so far? And then I'll kind of go into a few more details.
Ronica, could you clarify, and I might have missed this, I had to run out real quick, but you with Safe Families can still work with families after they come into CPS, if they make it into CPS case, or you only involved up until that point?
As long as the parent still has custody, we can be involved.
Okay,
So we get calls from a lot of CPS investigators. Talk to one. In fact, I'm hosting tonight. She's out there and we're kind of trying to, I've got a 17-year-old. We're trying to figure out what we can do. Got some calls out to Hendrick Home. But as long as the parent, the guardian has custody of the child and the state has not removed that child and taken over, custody, then we can be involved.
okay, good. Thanks for clarifying.
So we can even be kind of, we get in those situations too when CPS isn't really even sure if they're going to for sure do a removal. And if the parent agrees for us to host those children while they're trying to decide, and we have the volunteers willing to do that, we will do that. We also are able to be a safety piece as long as the parent is the one that's able to sign those documents for us. And it's, it can go up to where, it's even, maybe there is a court, but as long as they still have custody, we can be involved. Does that answer that question, Rebel? Yeah. Another place that we like to be involved, and we have been and have a lot of success with this, is when a parent is going to be having their children returned very soon. If we know of that circumstance and we've got a parent that, looks like they're a good enough parent and they're working really hard, and we want to try to get around that parent with some volunteers, some mentors, so that whenever they do have custody of their children again and they need something, we can be right there as a support, and a safety net to help move them going forward. We've done that as far as helping fill in with some transportation, some babysitting, because they didn't really have, they can only use certain babysitters once the children were returned. They had, which you'd want a safe person anyway, but that, we were extending that, giving them more resources. And a couple of the moms that we have come in once they have their children returned have not had those children removed again. Prior to us being around her, she lost her children her oldest twice, and her youngest once. And so after having both of them returned, she's been with us and we've been surrounding her for a little over 2 years now. And she has been able to keep her children, and you can see her as she moves through her life. So with an apartment, we were there helping her to get the apartment, the transportation, then she got a car, everything was going well. She had a job, she lost her job, she needed to call back out, got those supports back around her again with some things, and then moving forward. And then she had a little bit of a slip back in her addiction. So we were able to get in there and host while she went in for treatment and put those supports back around her officially. During all the time that she was not with Safe Families, she had her natural supports that she could call out to. But whenever, we're actually hosting and she's actually needing that level of a coach and everyone walking alongside her, then that's when that full support comes in through Safe Families. If we put it through our database, we track it very similar, to any type of case management. We've got notes going in by our family coaches. And then to talk a little bit about our staff piece. So, why me, right? The person who set this presentation up was my family coach supervisor. I have lost her. I've got a new family coach supervisor, but she's in training. And I am the director, but those are our two main professional pieces that are then supporting all his volunteers. So our family coach supervisor meets with all the family coaches and is making sure that they're up with their trainings, helping resource them. They're also the ones that are going out to all the agencies in town, talking to the referrals, talking about appropriate referrals, what we can do, what we can't do. and those type of things. And so, and then we do now have a church engagement person, but we have a very small staff, and you want to keep it that way because we're volunteer driven. But we do need a staff that then, we are supported too by the national office with all of our training, all of that then goes, and then the liability coverage, they do help with that liability coverage. And so some fees go back up to them too. So that's the staff. But as far as the ministries, we're walking, alongside and helping support our ministry leads at each of our churches. And then also our family coach supervisor is meeting with all of our family coaches, helping resource them, going over whatever it is that's going on, meeting with them weekly, and making sure that they're meeting with their families, weekly, and have gone into that home after the hosting within 48 hours, checking on it, that type of thing. And then making sure that those home screens are still, up to standard and all of that. So that's kind of the piece of why Safe Families. Of course, also funding and all the rest of the fun stuff that comes with running a nonprofit. And so I'm trying to think of other ways. Oh, here's another one. We have a huge gap, or had a huge gap here in Abilene, and that was for our 18, 19, 20, 21-year-old young women that did not have children. Prior to our house opening recently, very, very recently, there was nowhere for that age young lady to go except for Salvation Army. Hope Haven has had a waiting list for a really, really long time. I think their waiting list, unless I'm mistaken, most recently was up to about 2 years. So a young lady that may decide, hey, I'm going to go ahead and age out. I don't want to continue on. And she's on her own. And we did have, in fact, our very first young lady that we surrounded that was 18. She was aging out of foster care. And she decided that she wanted to be on her own. And then all of a sudden she needed some sports and she didn't have anywhere to go. And so she called out, and I just went back to Safe Families and said, look, if we can host a mom with their child, if we've got a volunteer willing to host and open their home to a mom with a child, can we open up our policy and rewrite some policy and procedures for this age so that we can meet this gap here in Abilene? Because we have a lot of gaps and this is a major one. And so we were able to do that as of November of last year. And since then, we have been able to host and move forward 9 teens. And so they are all, with the exception of one, she's now at our house. But all the rest of them have already moved on with jobs, either in college, apartments. Some of them were even donated cars, and have families that are surrounding them. And so that is another
Ronica,
thing. Yes.
Selma Lee, there she is. And her husband is sitting somewhere behind her somewhere. Perry Lee was one of the ones who donated a vehicle.
Yes. I did not realize you were on here. Yes, thank you so much. And I hosted that young man that they donated that vehicle to. And yeah, I just, he has just come so far. And just people, our community like that, just like the Lees saying, hey, there's a need, and we're gonna help out, and us all coming together and surrounding him. And he alone, just his story alone, he reached out. He was pretty much homeless, and we were able to, putting the supports around him, he was able to have 2 jobs within 2 days, and ended up working for a plumbing supply company. He ended up working with some volunteers toward getting his GED. He also worked on getting his license, and then they donated a vehicle for him to be able to drive. He did not have a very good self-esteem at all, did not think he was smart. And he did all of that within a 6-month period. He's also since been baptized, and he believes so much in himself now that he applied to go to college. He got into Cisco, and he is just moved into the dorms, and he is starting ACU this semester. So yeah, those
And
are the,
Ronica's getting emotional because she didn't really want him to leave her house.
well, you know, his story, and that's another thing I guess I should talk about. We do this together as families. This is where an entire family has a role in helping with Safe Families. I've hosted several times over the years, and my youngest son, I am about to adopt another one or moving in that direction. But prior to this one, I have a 19-year-old, and he is instrumental in helping me whenever we have families and children needing to be hosted. I mean, I will sit down and have a meeting with a mom and the kiddos, and mom really needs to go in for care. I mean, she's really needing to go in, and you might have a little teen that's hesitant, and my son sitting down, talking with him about video games, talking about whatever, and it just turns, you know, those kiddos around to where they want to come into that setting and feel comfortable there. Not, I shouldn't say want to. Well, I don't know. Sometimes they actually want to. You know, they kind of move as if we are like aunts and uncles, and those are the kind of relationships we actually do develop. We are like family. Well, when this young man came into our home, we did host him traditionally, and he was 17 at the time. So we did host him traditionally. And then when he turned 18, we were going to be able to host him for 30 more days, because that was a policy that we wrote, was to be able to do that. And he already had an apartment. I mean, he had a great job. And my son said he cannot leave. He can't leave. He goes, he's like my brother I always wanted. And I don't want him to leave the home until I go off to college. And so I said, well, you know, we need to probably ask him. You know, I don't know how many 18-year-olds want to just stay in a family setting when they have the ability to go into their own apartment. So we sat down with him, and, you know, he kind of agreed, and he was just really enjoying having that family setting, having the relationship with my son that he did and still does. And also so many people in the youth group too, all the young people in the youth group that he attached to. So that's my story. So yes, I definitely did not want him to leave. He's a part of our family now. He is trying to repair some things with his family, but it's going to be a little bit of a long road. So he does spend Christmas with us. He's got a room in, you know, our house that he'll always be able to come back to. And, you know, we talked to him about that, and we do consider him our son. Typically, you know, Safe Families is moving to surrounding a family, like I said, like an aunt or an uncle or a grandparent, and not as a parent. But there are those times when, you know, we get around a family or a young person, like our 18-year-olds, 19-year-olds, 20, 21-year-olds, like the young lady that's sitting out here. And I just encourage them that whenever they have that opportunity to be in that family setting, to just walk out, get to know, network, because you want to one day pick up your phone and know you can call these people that have opened their homes to you. And you're going to have that kind of relationship with them because, you know, that's just who our volunteers are. And, you know, just get out, network, develop.
I have a question.
Put them around you.
Do you have to be a part of the church that is a part of this? Okay, because I don't know that our church is a part of this group.
Nope, you sure don't. In fact,
Okay.
we have volunteers that don't even attend a church. I have some volunteers that, you know, you don't even have to be a believer to be a volunteer. You just have to be willing to work under a ministry.
Okay.
And so we have a lot of volunteers. We have a lot of volunteers that attend Beltway. We have a lot of volunteers that attend, we've got a few at Highland. We've got a few that are just kind of scattered through the city, that attend elsewhere where those churches don't have full-blown ministries. You know, they may say, hey, we are supportive of you, or, you know, we're going to get up and say, hey, you know, who wants to be a volunteer to kind of help? But they don't have that full-blown ministry. And then also another thing I would say too is, if your friends are out there, it does not take it does not take a whole lot of time to be a Safe Families volunteer, unless you want it to. You know, so if we're putting, like that young man that I just mentioned, you know, the person that helps him get his GED was meeting with him, you know, a couple of times a week for a few months. And then past that, you know, they didn't really need to be involved anymore. They were just a friend. I've had calls where people have helped me with transportation, you know, just a few times. And, you know, we just put it out there, and if they can help, they can help. Then we have other groups, volunteer groups, that they have their circle of support that's kind of built up by their friends and their family. And so when they host, they've kind of built this group around them. And so when they host, they have their coach, they have their own set of family friends that they call, you know, similar to kind of what I would visualize that y'all do with foster care families. You know, that a lot of them kind of have bring on and have their own families kind of come into that to kind of help give them the supports that they need. And that's another thing with Safe Families. When we bring in these volunteers, it's kind of getting their foot in the door. And then once they wrap around some of our families and start to say, okay, I think I can do this, it pulls them deeper into what's really going into our, you know, on in our community. And we will get more foster care families that will develop, you know, more people that will want to even be babysitters and go into that realm of surrounding, you know, the foster care families in our community. And so it kind of just all goes hand in hand, because, you know, many of them, when they're stepping out, they're not like you. They're, you know, they're not saying, hey, I want to be an advocate and commit this time. They're like, I just don't know if I can do this. And so we're asking, hey, could you help with just a little bit of transportation if a child needs to be taken to school one day, or getting a mom to the doctor? And they're like, oh yeah, well, I can do that. And so that's kind of how they become involved. And then once they're involved and they see the need that's out there, you know, they just more and more, you know, and they realize that that little piece, then together, then we're all working together. And no one is, you know, volunteering in isolation. And we make this great team, and it's fun. You know, it's fun when you're coming together as a group to support one another and to wrap around a family. Now, I probably need to speak a little bit. What other questions do we have? Then I'm going to kind of get into what type of referrals we'll take. That's usually another question.
You may cover that in your referrals, but it sounds similar to fostering, but if I'm understanding things correctly, it is more of a parent generated temporary situation than it is a state mandated. Am I understanding the difference correctly?
You absolutely are. You absolutely are. We see the parent as the orphan. So we're coming alongside a parent and are trying to support a parent, or, you know, like I said, 18, 19, 20, 21-year-old.
And,
But
and
we,
that's what makes, oh, sorry, go ahead.
so yes, that's the difference. We're coming alongside a parent. So yes, we're going to provide a space, a safe space. I actually don't care for the name Safe Families because it makes it sound like their family's not a safe spot. But you know, we're just providing a safe family. That's where that name comes from, a host family that's been approved, that allows us to get in that space, not only to keep us in this space as far as, you know, the state is concerned, but also for the parent. A lot of our parents that we're working with, not a lot of our parents they're worried about where their kids are going to go. You know, they're concerned about their child. And when they know that our volunteers have gone to the extent that they have to be become a volunteer, that helps ease their mind. And so that's important to them. But yes, we are walking alongside a parent. And if, you know, so far we are 100% return to parents. We do have one or two that I can think of that after, you know, those children were returned, there was a removal a few months down the road. Those were during COVID. So we wouldn't have even been able to really get back in there to the extent that we were. Not that we were not hosting during COVID, we were. We were not doing the family friending, the babysitting, the in and out, you know, the daily. It was, we're going to host your children for a period of time and we're going to have them. We're going to do more visits, kind of like you guys, you know, through the door, those kind of things, to try to limit that. But yes, we are completely surrounding a parent and working with them toward whatever their goals are. So lots of parents right now are reaching out because they're homeless. Lots of parents reach out because they need to go in for drug rehab. Lots of parents, single moms, reach out because they just need to go in and have deliver a child, and they have no one to care for their other children. And there is a possibility that they may lose their children, or, you know, they need to be removed if they don't have alternative care for those children. And then lots of families or single moms and single dads are reaching out because they want something different. They're looking for a mentor. They've heard about us. They want to be surrounded and are looking for people with like-minded. So they're going to join some of our parenting groups, and then our volunteers that are going to be around them as well as a group moving forward, just helping increase their network. But yes, we are walking alongside a parent. Now, the whole family is benefiting from this. And Levi's situation was a little different. But yes, we are typically surrounding a parent. Does that explain it for you?
Yeah, it does. And it shows me why you probably have motivation from the parents, because it's a choice more. It sounds to me, or what I hear you saying is it's more of a choice from the parents' perspective than if they had their children removed. So I do see the difference. Thank you for clarifying that.
Mm-hmm. Now, some of our parents, you know, if CPS is involved, they may have a choice. You know, you can either utilize Safe Families, or, you know, we're going to need to remove your child. In that instance, some people don't see that as much of a choice. But I always say I would a lot rather them have that opportunity to have that choice than to not. Again, it just depends on the situation as well. So if there is clear abuse, Safe Families is not involved. You know, and we're looking for that parent that really is gotten into this situation because they are socially isolated or their family is toxic. Many of the moms that we surround just did not receive parenting. So there may be a mom in the picture, but she's not a good choice to help with helping care for her, you know, her grandchildren. or even other family that may be there. Or maybe there is family there, but they need some help. You know, they're also struggling. And so we need to come along, you know, side that entire family. A lot of times when we come into those situations, we will see a lot of other family members start to step up, just because they see these volunteers coming alongside a family without receiving anything for that. I mean, that means a great deal. It also means a great deal to the parents that we're surrounding. Typically, when I do an intake call, first thing I'm going to do is just listen. Just want to listen. What's going on? And you can hear in their voice hope. Because a lot of times when they're calling out to the community, they're typically seen as just a name on a piece of paper. And there may be some judgment behind that, or they're maybe, you know, wait for an interview, or they're just hitting a wall, whatever it may be. Number one, it's just a lot of struggle out there, period, right now, especially to get into housing, all those type of things. But listening to them, sometimes we just listen. And then we help connect them to some other resources. And it's just enough for them to be listened to and heard, and then us kind of help them think through their next steps of whatever it is that they need to do. So yes, we are just listening for those things. Are they socially isolated? Is this going to be something that we can help within 6 months or less? Does this sound like a good enough parent? Meaning, you know, this parent is wanting to move toward whatever it is so that they can provide for their children. Just to give you an example, I had CPS call out, and they had a domestic violence case. And mom was needing to go and take her children and leave that situation. And so we were looking at how they wanted to know, could we host the children? And I said, well, is she going into Noah Project? Is she going for help? And they said, well, we're not sure if she'll leave. And I said, well, no, you know, she needs to be the mom. She needs to get those kiddos to safety. And they're the priority. And if she's in that situation to where she's wanting to stay there, then she's not ready for Safe Families. So we're looking for a mom that is willing and ready to put some goals in place to take care of her children and be able to care for them, or a dad. How do parents hear about Safe Families? All different resources. We have a lot of referrals that come in from schools, hospitals. We dropped off some more brochures to a doctor's office today. And so all over, police, churches. I can't think of anyone that's really not a referral for us. We have, you know, referrals that come in from everywhere. We also have our self-referrals that they can go on and they can search under 211 and they can come to Safe Families. Now, that's not an easy thing to list on 211. We're, you know, we may be under, I don't think we're under housing, even though, you know, we can help, you know, host children. So in babysitting, it's not that we just all of a sudden babysit for everyone. We're just surrounding a family if they're needing some temporary care and some temporary babysitting until long-term babysitting can be put in place, those type of things. And so it's not easy to put into the categories that we need to on 211, but we just about hit every single one of them if we were going to do that. But really, we just need to get around the family first, and then we can provide a lot of support through the use of our volunteers. And yes, I do have printed materials that I can give you guys. We've got, you know, brochures that we hand out to our families. We have some that you can hand out to, you know, anyone that you think might want to be a volunteer too. They're just kind of geared to whoever it is that we're giving them to. But we definitely are going to drop some of these off to CASA so that y'all can have these to hand out to any of the families, refugee families. We have surrounded one refugee family So yes, a little bit. It's really going to depend on, you know, what volunteers that we have that are going to step up. I really have not received very many referrals to work with the refugee families, but we have had a few. And then another thing, I guess, is if whoever is referring the family, if the child's behavior is not one that could go into a family setting, then that is not a good fit for Safe Families. Now, that doesn't mean don't call. You know, go ahead and call. You can staff it with me. You can have them call. But if it's clear that that child would not fit in a family setting for whatever reason, then we're probably not going to be able to help them. If it's a teen that, you know, you're fearing is going to run away or is trying to get away to a boyfriend or has, you know, is taking drugs or anything, then that's not a good fit for Safe Families. If it's a child with some medical issues of some type, depends. You know, we have some volunteers that are able to host that child. It just really depends on what we have. And the larger we grow, the more we will be able to do. And then, am I missing anything, Sandra, that you can think of?
I don't think so. I think as CASAs, we need to kind of think of this. If To Engage is having a challenge finding a home for the child, then probably Safe Families would not be the best place because we're not trained foster homes in this organization. But creativity is always at the bottom of different things that are done. So of course, as she said, make sure and call, and because Ronica knows the lay of the land for all of this. So, and if you will bring some of those brochures tomorrow night, I will get them up to the CASA office if that will help you.
Absolutely. Absolutely. And, you know, another thing is we want to try to surround any way we can. So even if we aren't able to host, you know, we've had situations where we've had a mom with a few kids and we weren't really sure if, you know, those kiddos were going to fit well in a family setting. And so the ministry actually decided that they would go ahead and put that family up in a hotel for a few nights. That gives us the opportunity to, you know, help transport those kids to school, bring them to the dinner table where we got some people sitting down, you know, meeting with them, having dinner, getting to know the kids, inviting them to church, whatever it is, so that we can kind of see whether or not those kiddos would be a good fit. So we do try to get as creative as possible, but we also try to help whenever we can. So even on whatever level. So maybe we can't host, but we can help with some babysitting, or maybe we can help with some transportation or some mentoring or whatever it is that we can do. We try to increase their network in any way that we possibly can. We don't ever want to say we can't help. That's really, we really try not to.
There's a question about Taylor County only. You want to look at that one?
We try to stay within where we have a good church support. So, you know, the original Safe Families, when it was here before, tried to handle all of Texas. And my only hosting was a baby from Houston. And mom was on bed rest, went through her savings, needed to get childcare. So the child needed to be 6 weeks old. And then also she needed to get another job. She lost her job while she was on bed rest. Kind of sad that she had to have her child hosted all the way in Abilene from Houston. And you can imagine me and why it was I felt Safe Families need to be here, because that was not at all why I thought I was ever drawn to Safe Families, that I would be caring for a baby that just needed mainly some babysitting and should have been in the arms of his mom at night. And is one of the reasons I fought so hard for Safe Families here, because I just could not believe that in the size of Houston, they couldn't help. So in a situation like that, You know, when we have someone that maybe is going to jail and that child just needs to be hosted. And so there's not really the need for that visitation, or, you know, it's going to be, we can still have visitation, but it's kind of like you guys, where you've got the foster care that's, you know, outside of Abilene, and you're going and making that happen. In those circumstances, then yes, you know, we will try to host that child. Primarily though, we are mainly in Taylor County, Jones County, you know, just around the areas of where our volunteers are, because we want those children back with mom or dad as soon as possible. And those volunteers are kind of stepping in. So, you know, visualize mom has the children. Well, she may need some help with tutoring or babysitting. Well, you got to have a volunteer that's close to be able to get over there and do that. And then the ministry is actually the one that helps facilitate all of that and helps run that. So the family coaches are the ones getting the meals, the family, you know, connecting whether or not, you know, you need. So even though it's going to go through our database, the family coach and the ministry is that making sure how much they're going to support that family. And so it's best to just stay wherever your strong ministries are. So I, as staff, would be happy to bring on churches in Stamford, in Clyde, Brownwood. I don't, you know, I can go probably out, you know, an hour and a half, as long as I have some good ministries there that can support those families there. Then we can start bringing in more referrals from those areas. That's how we like to do it. And as the state director now developing the chapters that I'm trying to develop, that is also, you know, what we're doing. We're trying to expand around wherever those churches are and build out from there. Any other questions?
Quiet group.
Yeah, it is. Well, you know, it's different, and you know, they're your CASA too. So post CPS case closure 3-6-9 months down the road.
Good question.
Yes. And this is kind of, you know, when I'm talking about the supports that we can provide, if you know of a mom or a dad that's even receiving, you know, their children back, definitely let them know about us. But yes, if they reach back out, then yes.
That's awesome.
If they're calling to you, then they are most likely a fit for us. And that's what we see a lot of times with our families. And that's what's really neat about it. They call us. So if they didn't self-referral to begin with, eventually they are. They're the ones calling back out for help, and they're calling us. Can you help me here? Can you help me there? And CPS may even be involved. You know, we had a family that a teacher was worried about the son because he was drawing pictures of suicide or thinking, you know, and so she was concerned. Mom had already called out to us and said, I'm concerned about my child. I think I need to get some mentors around him. He's struggling in school. Can you help with tutoring? Can I get back that kind of full force? And we sure did. And so then we were able just to talk to CPS, let them know that we were already involved. And I said, let them know you've already made a call out to us. They're still going to want to talk to us, of course. And we still want to use all of our resources. We want to use any resource that we have. That's another, I guess that's another good thing to talk about just briefly. When Safe Families becomes involved, our community a lot of times pulled out. Well, that's not what, and I'm not talking about our community like as in our people. I'm talking about our referral sources a lot of times are kind of like, you've got it. Bye. You know, we're so overworked, you've got it. Well, that's really not what, you know, Safe Families is. We're really trying to connect that family to the resources in the community. So we ideally, you know, we would want to, you know, and I know it's community-based care now, and so if CPS is, past a CPS investigator, obviously there's been a removal. But say family-based services, we would love to work alongside, family-based services, or with our investigators or whatever we need. And we do that a lot. We will work alongside our investigators for a while to try to prevent the need for that removal. And so to develop that relationship, but the same with anybody else, we're trying to connect them to the resources. We're not the replacement for counseling. That's not who we are. We're coming along and we're providing relationship and then helping connect them, to the other resources in the community. Yes, so abilene.safe-families.org is our website.
Say that again. Abilene dash or dot?
Abilene.safe, SAFE -families.org is our website. And then I have my computer up, otherwise I'd be typing it for you. It's kind of in a strange, it's like a little computer, and anyway. And I'm terrible on Zoom, guys. I'm way better in person, I promise you.
Great.
And
There you go. Thank you, Cole.
yes, thank you. And then the telephone number, the intake line is 325-280-5873.
280-5870.
5873.
Oh, 73. And that's the intake.
And that is the intake line. And then my number, if any of you have a question, you call me. So my cell number is 325-439-6263.
So, and Ronica, I had another thought. There were a wide range of people on here. Our advocates come from all walks of life. They have different civic groups. They have different church groups, different churches, all kinds of influence in the community, and their fingers are all over the community. If someone is interested in having you come and present to a Sunday school class or to their civic group, all they have to do is reach out to you, I'm assuming, and that would be great.
Yes, absolutely. And do they know my email? It's our Worgull at safefamilies.net. You can share that.
2 L's, right?
Yes, ma'am. I like how you just do all my work for me, Rebel.
Did I spell it right? I can't see very well.
You're awesome. You're amazing. So, and and to just use this opportunity real quick, I have the national office or the National Alliance Director coming this Thursday and Friday to visit with me. I have been felt called to get into that state space to help expand Safe Families across Texas. The development team isn't really sure if Texas is ready for Safe Families. We all know that Texas is ready for Safe Families. They also weren't sure about starting Safe Families in communities our size. They feel like we have a tiny community. I explained to them that Safe Families in Abilene is amazing for opportunities just like this. We come together as a community, we support one another. Whenever I'm on a call, I get to pretty much be on a call with any other nonprofit in town. I'm hoping that it's going to be the same in some of the other places that I'm trying to develop Safe Families. And so I am bringing a chapter to the Seguin, New Braunfels area. And then we're going to be moving into San Antonio, but right there in that kind of small area, about 120,000. I'm working with a great group down there. They are needing some support. So if you have any contacts in that area, any funding sources, especially that says, hey, they're already communicating with St. Jude, they're already in the community-based care, all of it. That's going to be a great chapter. Waco would also like to come on. They're in the beginning stages. Houston would also like to come on. We've got some people we're talking to there. Lubbock is also another one really, really close developing a chapter. Right now in Texas, we have been around since 2019 is when I came on, May of 2019. And then DFW is the only other active chapter in Texas. And they came on in 2017, and they are actually smaller than we are. And I think it has a lot to do with the fact of, like I said, you grow out from those churches. And I get on a call like this and I get to know a lot of people in our community and have a good voice. And that's just really hard to spread in such a large area with such a small staff, because we do, you know, we all lead from the front as well. And, you know, it is a lot of work. So,
Well, if you guys have any contacts, you know anyone in those areas, please reach out to her. If you would like to help raise awareness about safe families, you know, it sounds like there's a volunteer opportunity to fit just about everybody's comfort level, whether it's transportation or if it's meals or whatever. So if you know some people that want to get involved, Sandra's a great resource if you're up here at the office and you want to talk to Sandra, and then reach out to Ronica. But if you want her to come share to a group, to a church, to a class, whatever, please reach out to her. I think, you know, one of the things that we talked about during the United Way campaign with Minding the Gap, it takes all of us in our community doing our part, even if it's a little part or if it's a big part. If we will all do our part, we mind the gap, and families don't fall through those gaps. Children don't fall through those gaps. We catch it, we can help, we can make a difference, but it takes all of us. So you might know just the right person in one of those cities or here in Abilene that could be a great resource for Ronica and Safe Families. And I love the fact that they are helping on the backside, hopefully keeping families from becoming a statistic and being a CPS case, as well as being available through that process or after the process. So thank you, Ronica, for coming and sharing. You guys give her a round of applause and high fives.
hey, Rebel, I want to give one. I didn't give some stats real quick. I forgot
Okay.
about that. So just really quickly, and thank you so much. Since September of 2019, we have been able to deflect for certain 35 children from going in to foster care with the use of 17 circles of support.
Wow.
That's not a lot of people.
It
Not a lot of host
is.
families. Not all of them were hosted. We are a very small group. So imagine with just a small amount, what it is that we're able to do, especially when you look at that we only have, what, about 100 foster care families
Mhm.
in Abilene. So we are working to help on that side. And I exactly, Rebel, anyone can be involved. And typically we don't go after the big churches. We go after the volunteers and we build up from there.
Yeah.
So thank you.
Well,
so
thank
much.
you, Ronica. We appreciate you. And guys, make sure you get her information. When I share the link to this to the people that didn't get to participate tonight, I'll put that in there so you'll have that. Sandra's going to get some materials up here, or Ronica can bring them to me tomorrow at our meeting. We're going to be doing a foster care simulation. Y'all will be hearing a little bit about soon as well. But anyway, thank you guys. You're released. Thank you for coming. Thank you for participating and being such great advocates for our community. Bye, Ronica. Thank you.
Thanks a lot, everybody. Thanks, Rebel.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you, Rebel.
Thank you, my dear. See you tomorrow.